I want to revisit so I did an episode about the Holloman Air Force Base landing, and not only that, but also the meeting between Eisenhower and these non-human intelligence, these aliens, and how there was a treaty. I believe it's called the Granada Treaty. And I was really skeptical of that. And thank you to my couple of my followers, man. They really pushed me to cover that story. I'm really glad that they did. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat, man. But they really pushed me to cover that. And I'm really glad they did because and here's the thing, I'm stumbling over more evidence, you know, and I didn't put it in that episode, and I'm really sorry. I should have probably researched better. But I found some footage of Robert Dean talking about a Holloman Air Force Base being a legit event. This actually happened. That this treaty actually happened. Those of you that don't know who Robert Dean is, he was involved with NATO and he had the highest clearance. It was called Cosmic Top Secret. And he's seen this document. It was called the Shape. So like Shape headquarters. I guess this was a part of NATO or whatever. And he came upon this document. Maybe the document wasn't called Shape, but that's where he was, stationed at when he saw this document. And it talked about these beings, and that this treaty happened with Eisenhower, and that they traded technology to do these abductions of humans and cattle mutilations and such, and that they kind of went off the reservation, started getting crazy with it, and just started doing whatever they wanted. And this treaty kind of broke down, and because some people say that these ETs are liars. Now, I'm not saying all species of ETs are liars. From what I understand from Eric Davis at the briefing with the Citizens for Disclosure Fund, when Eric Davis was telling Representative Burleson that there was 4 non-human species that were visiting Earth. The 4 were, now I'm probably going to get I'm probably going to get a flag from YouTube for saying these things, but I'll try to do it in a way where I don't get flagged here. But so you got the Greys, Nordics, these insectoid type things, like mantis type beings that apparently they run the show. They're the like super intelligent, beings. And then you have to to quote uh hecklefish, lizard people. Hopefully that doesn't get me a flag, because when I usually say what they actually are, I get a flag at the bottom.
Another thing that had been concluded, and this was a conclusion that the military people, our military, knew when I left the service in 1976. I retired at the Presidio of San Francisco in 1976 after 27 years of service. And at that time, it was quite apparent to some of our scientists and some of our researchers that we were not simply dealing with a simple extraterrestrial problem here. We weren't simply dealing with visitations from interplanetary intelligence. We were dealing with visitations from interstellar intelligence. We were probably dealing with intelligences intergalactic in nature. And the most stunning thing of all was, very probably and most likely, that some of these advanced intelligences were literally multidimensional in their origins. And some of them apparently, and we had evidence to support this, literally could indeed travel in time. Now, if you think that wasn't a hair raiser, a blockbuster for some of our military planners, it was really getting their attention. Not only are we dealing with interstellar, intergalactic, but we're dealing with multidimensional beings who apparently can indeed travel in time.
And then it brought us around full circle. We started talking about Tim Taylor. And those of you who don't know who that is, Tim Taylor was involved with Diana Pasulka. She wrote this book called Cosmic. Oh man, what was the name of her book, dude? American Cosmic, man. That's the name of the book. Diana Pasulka. She wrote this book called American Cosmic. She talked about this dude Tim Taylor, and he was like this. His nickname was actually the Dragon, and he was involved with NASA and intelligence, and he was like high up on the totem pole. And I guess he did these lectures for his students, and he spoke about a hierarchy of beings, right? And you had God, you had angels, then you had the others, which are these extraterrestrials. And then dig this. The next on the totem pole of this hierarchy of beings was elements of intelligence agency. Not the whole intelligence agency, but elements of it. And that made me ponder, like, why would they be higher than humans, right? And then after that is humans. But that made me think, like, why would they be listed on this man's hierarchy of beings? This gentleman who's not only mentioned in that, but he's also in Chris Bledsoe's book, UFO of God. And in her book, she refers to him as Tyler D to keep him secret, right? But in Chris Bledsoe's book, he pretty much tells you Tim Taylor. But it's the same individual that they're talking about, right? And for those of you who don't know who Chris Bledsoe is, he's a huge figure in the UFO community who actually can summon orbs at will. He'll have these huge gatherings and these orbs appear in the sky and they film them. He has an Instagram account where he uploads footage of this all the time. Really, really awesome footage of orbs and such. And not only that, but he had this wild experience with ETs, and he actually came in contact with this woman that he calls the lady. And it's like this small woman in a white gown that was hovering off the ground. And apparently he believes this is Hathor, right? That, like, from Egypt, you know. And there was like he made these, I guess, predictions and prophecies back in 2013, and he pretty much nailed it, you know, when he talked about the global sickness from 2020, and um, he nailed it with some other things that he spoke about, and he says that in 2026 the star Regulus, which is in the constellation of Leo, is going to rise above the Sphinx on Easter of 2026, and new knowledge is going to be upon the earth. And there's a lot of weird connections here, okay? Because the new pope, right, is Pope Leo. And it's thought that this gentleman is the last pope.
So did you know Pope Francis is the last pope, and after that it will be the Judgment Day?
So it literally ends after Pope Francis?
Yeah. And this book in the Vatican archives, right, predicted every single pope from 1143 all the way to our current pope. But the scary thing is, after Pope Francis, the last one, it just says Judgment Day. And the creepiest thing inside St. Paul's Basilica ordering the whole inner sanctuary is a picture of every single pope, right? But what's weird is that there's only a certain amount of markers where you can put the picture. There's just one left after Pope Francis. They've always said once that last slot is filled, it will be the end of the world. He predicted the time it took to go from the first pope that he wrote about to the halfway mark was 422 years. He's saying from the middle one to the end, another 422 years will be the end of the world. If you do 422 in the middle pope, which was 1,585, that year is 2027. It's even weirder. Pope John the 23rd, he said that the end of the world would happen 2,000 years plus Christ's life. So that adds up to 2027 as well.
And it's strange because at the Vatican, they have these plaques, you know, where they'll have pictures of the popes, and it goes all the way around, you know, this gallery. And after the pope that just died, I guess Pope Francis, there's only one plaque left, and there's no room to put any more plaques. And this gentleman, Malaki, I forget, he made these predictions way back in, like, you know, I believe like maybe the 1100s or 1300s. I could be getting the details wrong here, but the gist of the story is this dude predicted all the popes, right? And apparently this pope here is the last pope. And some refer to him as like the Black Pope, you know, like not like, you know, not black, but like Peter the Roman is how he's referred to. And apparently this is like where the evil elements of the Vatican kind of come to the surface and gain control. And this is all just me spitballing here, right? It's just strange. His name is Leo, and Chris Bledsoe made this prediction about star Regulus, which is in the constellation of Leo, rising above the Sphinx on Easter of 2026, on or around. So, just wild, a lot of things coming to a head here. And there's a lot of talk about 2027 and that there's something coming in 2027 that people don't really apparently some people have gotten in trouble for speaking about this. Nobody really knows what this event in 2027 is going to be. But it's strange that it coincides with this last Pope prophecy and all these Chris Bledsoe connections and it's just really wild, these claims that are being tossed around here. And to get back to what I was talking about with Tim Taylor and the intelligence elements that are higher on the hierarchy than humans, could this be these non-human beings that look exactly like us? And is it possible that they're in control of the intelligence communities around the world? Maybe not just America, but British, MI6 and Mossad and all these other intelligence agencies. Is it possible that they're being run by non-human elements? And it's strange because this disclosure thing, we get so close, man. Like we're right there. Like just do it. Just disclose, man. Trump's going to be the disclosure president and all this. And, 2025 is the year that, disclosure happens. And it's all this, there's all this hype. Age of disclosure comes out. You got Skywatcher. You got all these whistleblowers just pouring out, just saying, just spilling the beans on the reverse engineering and the crash retrievals and all of it, man. But we just can't get to the finish line. We just can't get a legitimate, official disclosure of the reality of the situation. And it's so frustrating, especially as somebody who covers this subject. Sometimes I get really discouraged, man. Like not too long ago, I took like 2 weeks off because I was so discouraged by the whole thing. And I just don't understand, like, what elements are in our government that's that powerful that can shut this down the way that they do. So I pose the question to you. What do you think Tim Taylor meant by this with this hierarchy? Look, this guy, he doesn't even have to go through like security checks at the airport. Like he's this dude is something else, man. Like when he's like at NASA and stuff, like he don't stop at the checkpoint booths or nothing. He just drives around like he owns the place. And according to Chris Bledsoe, man, all the astronauts and people at NASA told him every time a rocket goes into space, there's a UAP that goes up there with it or monitors the situation. And it brings me back to the footage I covered with Robert Shape with the dragons, the custodian file, with these dragons that buzz airplanes every time an airplane's in the air. And I'm gonna try it. I got a 4K camera and pop that thing on 60 frames per second and see what I can get and just slow it down. And that Blue Angels footage of looking forward at 2313, just go look it up yourself. Blue Angels looking forward. It's a video. Go to 2313 in the time. That's a timestamp. You're going to see a UAP and it makes a clicking sound, just like Robert Shape says it does, because of the high electromagnetic, you know, field that this thing has. Excuse me. What do you guys think about all this? I mean, I'm kind of just dumping it on you guys, right? Um, spitballing today, man. We're just covering everything. And I'll try to get some footage and stuff, to mix in here with this episode to make it a little more appealing. But I really appreciate you guys sticking with me. You can't end the episode without speaking about this. So AJ from the Y Files was on Joe Rogan, and they were speaking about Hal Puthoff, and apparently there's like this group called the Aviary, right? And apparently like Rick Doty and there's these people involved with this Aviary, and that they seem to promote these narratives of UAPs and disclosure and UFOs alien technology and reverse engineering and crash retrievals, and they try to keep us. This is the story, right? That I kind of got from this. I've not only heard it from AJ, but I've heard it from other places also that this is a thing, and that they keep us kind of chasing our tail with this UAP subject. Where are the beings from? Are they interdimensional? Are they alien? Have they been here all along? Are they visitors? And how Putoff said these things on Joe Rogan. And it's like, and the way that the story goes is that this is all just a put on, just to keep us confused while they can work on their advanced technology, these anti-gravitic technologies on the side. And then you look at these scientists that were unalive, in various ways, like Ning and Amy Eskridge, and it makes you wonder, because they were these scientists were onto something. They thought that they had it. Amy Eskridge was talking about disclosing, that she had figured it out. The day that she passed, apparently she did some kind of she went and met with some NASA officials, and did some kind of presentation. Just a beautiful young girl. It's really a shame what happened to her. I did an episode on that, and that was one of the episodes I did that, like, I usually have a lot of fun doing it, but that episode, it was kind of dark. And so it makes me wonder, and I hope not. I don't think so. Look, there's definitely more to reality than what what's at face value. That's for sure. So either way, it doesn't matter, whether it's aliens or it's spiritual. There's definitely something going on behind the scenes, like behind the veil. There is a veil, and well, what's behind the veil is the question, and that could be it too. They might not want us to know that. Um, this is when you start getting into things like simulation theory and things of that nature. Um, and just really what the nature of reality is. It's just, I love it. I love the subject. So whether there's ETs or it's interdimensional beings or it's spirits or whatever it is, um, I have a hell of a lot of fun just investigating, just looking into the cracks of the internet, trying to find little nuggets of truth. I'm glad you guys are here, along for the ride. What do you guys think, man? 2027, all this jazz, last pope, the Malachi or whatever his name is, his prophecies. Isn't it odd? Like Chris Bledsoe, he thinks the lady is Hathor, right? Which is one of the Egyptian Ennead, deities, and there was 9 of them, and there was a gentleman named Puharich, Dr. Puharich, right? And he was involved with like channeling, and apparently he channeled the 9. They termed themselves the 9, right? And there's 9 Egyptian deities, and like Aleister Crowley, when he started getting into the real occult stuff, he had visited Egypt, and that's really where, he really kind of went over the deep end somewhat, some would say. And then you just kind of look at, like, the guitars from Blink 182, he talks about like the old gods coming back and stuff, and all of a sudden he's not doing any public appearances or interviews anymore. And it just makes you wonder why, And then you look at the monolithic structures that are in Egypt, and these massive, blocks and pyramids and statues, and just, man, you can go on and on. All you gotta do is watch Uncharted X with Ben, dude, and it'll blow your mind, dude. I mean, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it really will. What's going on here? Is there a connection with Egypt and all this whole phenomenon? Just a question. I'm not putting it out there as fact. I'm just posing the question to you. What do you guys think? It just appears like you see how did they do those things? It just defies all logic. And then you look at like the Kailasa temple, in Egypt. And that thing, this giant stone, and it's like, how did they do that? There's pillars, bridges, and such, all just carved right out of stone. And it's just amazing, man. And it makes me think, like, in India, the ancient Veda texts talk about these Vamanas, flying ships that these demigods would fly around in. Sometimes they would like have battles in the sky and whatnot. And you think, oh, that's just a myth. Okay, yeah, that's just a myth. But how the hell did they carve that temple, dude? Like, who did that? Like, with chisels and hammers? I don't think so, man. Intricate carvings and elephant statues and just wild, man. These shrines and these like galleries inside the temple. It's just amazing, dude. The floor is shine to a high shine. It's made of basalt rock, for God's sake. And then you think of like Saqqara, the underground in Egypt, these humongous black granite boxes that they carved that are like 200 tons, man. Perfectly carved boxes, perfect right angles and all that, like shine to a high finish, and they're way down deep in these tunnels, man. Like the tunnels are like long, man, before you even get to the place where the gallery, where all the boxes and stuff are like set down in these little alcoves. And it's just like, how did they do that? With what machines? Because there's no way you're dragging it. You're not dragging a 200-ton box through a tunnel. And the tunnel's only like a foot wider than the box. How did they do it? Something was going on. And it's like that interview that Lou Elizondo did with I forget what interview it was, but he was talking about what if everything you thought was true turned out to not be true? It's not what you think it is. He said that in an interview, Lou. Now I know a lot of people got a lot of problems with Lou right now because of that picture, and I agree. But he says things in these cryptic ways. It doesn't mean that that's all a lie. Some of these cryptic things that he says, he could be pointing us in the right direction. Now I know a lot of you. I shouldn't even have brought his name up, dude. But I just find it interesting. Like, what if? What if our past isn't what we think it is? You know? What if our past is totally different? Our history is what if human history is totally different than what we've been taught? It's not that far fetched to think that people wouldn't make adjustments in history for the greater good of humanity, if they felt like that's what they needed to do. And we're dead and gone now. How would we know? Right? All right, I'm done. I've been spitballing, ranting, and raving enough. If you're still here, thank you very much. If you enjoyed what I had to say, please hit the like, subscribe, share it to a friend, share it to 2 friends, man. Swing past my Patreon, maybe, I really appreciate you.